member of his cabinet. Your party chairman has criticized that. Do you have any concerns about the makeup of his cabinet?
I can only say what I did. And I tried to have a cabinet that was reflective of the people of our state, that was diverse. I'm very proud that 50% of my cabinet members were women, that I had African Americans in my cabinet. I had openly, a cabinet member that was openly associated with the GVLT community. I even had a Mennonite in my cabinet. So I had a wonderful cabinet, and I don't think it's appropriate for me to at this point, certainly, to make a judgment about my successor's cabinet.
Just curious, who's a Mennonite?
Our director of developmental disabilities, John Martin.
Okay. A lot of Democrats today are criticizing President Obama for cutting the deal with the Republicans on the tax cuts. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's a fairly complex situation. I was on the phone last night with several other governors and David Axelrod as he was walking us through the thinking process that led to the agreement. As I said a couple of weeks ago, I am puzzled by leaders of the Republican Party who would say that we cannot provide unemployment insurance to people who are out of work during this terrible recession without those being paid for. And yet they're more than willing to give tax cuts to not just millionaires, but people who make $1 million a year, which means that they're probably multiple millionaires. And it's okay to add that to the deficit. That doesn't have to be paid for. I think that shows a fundamental difference between the two parties, the two value systems that separate the two parties.
We've actually said that if Democrats couldn't win on this one, they couldn't win.
I mean, if we can't win that argument, that's a fairly clear demarcation between the value systems and the values of the two parties. Having said that, I think, I have a lot of sympathy with the president for not wanting 2 million Americans this month to be deprived of unemployment insurance. And so I think he felt that it was the best agreement that he could get.
Just undermine or maybe render hypocritical Republican message through the whole campaign that government too big, spends too much, and here we have a deal which limits taxes and spends more money.
Yes. That's ironic, is it not? It's ironic. And the same people who were concerned about, said they were concerned about the deficit are those who, were, I don't know this for sure because I saw it on TV, and not everything you see on TV is accurate, but there was a presentation on TV that said that the tax breaks for people making more than $1 million a year could have provided college tuition, room and board, to at least half of the college students in America.
Give us an exclusive. You're sitting in the Oval Office with the President of the United States, behind closed doors. Job opportunity come up? Your future come up?
For me?
For you.
Well, we talked more about job opportunities for...
and when you got past that discussion,
Iowa.
did it go to your job discussion?
The president said, what do you want to do? And I said, since the election, I and my executive staff have spent most of our time trying to look after those who have worked really hard for me in this administration and now find themselves in need of, you know, of a way to move on and have an income for their families and so on and so forth. And so I said, I really haven't thought about what I may want to do. I'm not going to retire. I hope to die working, so I'm not going to retire. I've got at least, you know, 10 to 15 to, you know, my dad lived to 92. You know, maybe, you know, a good 20 years of productive life left. So the president said, think about it, and when you reach a conclusion, let me know. We'll talk. So that's as far as it went.
Governor, last week we saw some details about what state agencies might have to do in the case of budgets.
Yes.
Was there any budget proposal that was more troubling to you or that stood out in the fact that this is going to be a huge change from how you run the state?
I guess I don't really want to talk specifically about that. I mean, you know, the most vulnerable among us are you know, the people that I would feel greatest concern for, obviously. But it's, you know, these are challenging times.
Governor, at the end of this year, Senator Voinovich is retiring.
Yes.
Any reflections or comments about his legacy and what he meant for how?
Well, he's been a remarkable public servant, having served as, I think, city councilman, mayor, legislature. I mean, he's occupied just about every office you can think of, except you know, a judicial office. And you know, I haven't always agreed with him, but I do think that he has demonstrated correctly, in my judgment, a willingness to deviate from right-wing orthodoxy at times, and I appreciate the fact that he has been that kind of leader.
Were you in Congress when Lucasville riot broke out?
Yes, I had just left Lucasville. I had just been, I mean, I was working there. I was elected in November, and the riot occurred on Easter Sunday the next year.
What's your appraisal of how he handled that?
You know, I think he handled it, from my perspective, he handled it well. Now, why do I say that? I was on site there the entire time. I lived a mile from the prison. I got home, Frances and I did, from Easter Sunday at her folks in Kentucky. As we were driving near where we lived, we saw the lights and so on. I called the warden. He told me what had happened. And as you know, as some of you may remember, the families gathered at the high school that had not yet been occupied, but had been completed right across the road from the prison. And so I spent that entire week there because we were on congressional recess. And I talked a lot to the press because there were press there from all over the world. And neither the governor or the lieutenant governor were on site, and I think that's appropriate. And I got a letter from then Governor Voinovich and then Lieutenant Governor Mike DeWine following the riot, thanking me for my involvement and for the fact that I was the only political person, quite frankly, that was talking to the press. And they thanked me for, you know, my responsible way in dealing with it. Knowing, I mean, having worked in there, I knew that every word that was uttered was going to be heard by the inmates and could have terrible consequences. So, you know, the words had to be carefully chosen and so on. And, you know, in subsequent campaigns, opponents tried to accuse me of, you know, being sympathetic to the rioters and all that kind of stuff. And in fact, I used the letters that I had received from Governor Voinovich and Lieutenant Governor DeWine to protect myself. But from, as far as I know, the governor reacted appropriately. And so I have no criticisms of anything that he did or did not do during that time.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.